I'm staring at the cover of Forbes right now. Alexandra's got that smile plastered on her face, the one that screams, "I just reinvented capitalism." The headline reads, "The Financial Visionary: How One Woman Built a $300 million fintech empire from scratch." Beautiful photo, perfect lighting, hides the fact she hasn't written a line of code since 2019. Hides the fact her revolutionary vision was usually just coffee-stained napkin sketches I had to turn into actual financial algorithms. But mostly, it hides me. I'm Hunter Morrison, 47 years old. To the new hires, I'm that quiet guy in the corner office who handles the technical compliance stuff. To the board, I'm a line item on the org chart. But to that woman grinning from the magazine rack, I'm the person who owns 49% of the company she's trying to sell out from under me. She thinks I'm invisible. Thinks because I don't do podcasts or tweet about disrupting finance, I don't matter. She's about to learn that real power doesn't announce itself on LinkedIn. It just acts. Before I tell you how I dismantled a $300 million IPO with a single red folder, you need to understand how we got here. This isn't some messy divorce story. This is about breach of fiduciary duty. And if you enjoy watching corporate arrogance get surgically removed without anesthesia, stick around. Let me take you back 8 years to when this all started. We weren't in some glass tower in downtown Austin back then. We were in a cramped office above Franklin Barbecue on South Congress, the kind of place where the Wi-Fi cut out every time someone used the microwave downstairs. The smell of brisket smoke drifted up through the floorboards, mixing with the scent of stale coffee and startup desperation. Alexandra was the face. She could walk into a room of skeptical Texas bankers and convince them to invest in sand futures. Former Goldman Sachs, MBA from Wharton, the whole package. She had that investment banker confidence that could sell ice to Eskimos. I was the engine. Navy nuclear engineer for 6 years, then 15 years building financial systems for IBM and Dell. I knew how to make things work, not just look good in PowerPoint. While she was networking at cocktail parties, I was in the server room making sure our algorithms actually functioned. Back in 2016, we were just two people with complementary skills and a shared dream of building something that mattered. Financial technology that would actually help small businesses access capital, not just another app designed to extract fees from desperate entrepreneurs. I remember the night we drafted our partnership agreement like it was yesterday. It wasn't on a napkin. I don't do napkins. We were sitting in my kitchen in Clarksville, laptops on the table, surrounded by empty Shiner bottles and takeout containers from that same barbecue joint where our office sat. "We need clear boundaries, Hunter," Alexandra said, pacing my living room like a caged investment banker. She was wearing jeans and an old Longhorns t-shirt, back when she still dressed like a normal person instead of a Fortune 500 CEO. Investors get nervous about co-founder conflicts. They want to see a clear chain of command. "So what are you suggesting?" I asked, fingers hovering over my keyboard. The blue glow from the screen lit up my kitchen table like mission control. "You handle the tech stack, the compliance, the back-end architecture. I handle investors, press, strategy. You be the CTO, I'll be CEO. Clean separation of duties." I wasn't emotional about it, never have been. The Navy teaches you that ego gets ships sunk, and I'd seen enough corporate politics at IBM to know that clear roles prevent conflicts down the road. "What about equity split?" 50-50, she said without hesitation, stopping her pacing to look me in the eye. "But I need voting control for daily operations. Investors expect that from a CEO." That made sense. I had no interest in playing politics with venture capitalists or schmoozing at Austin tech meetups. I wanted to build things, solve problems, write code that actually worked. So I wrote it. The partnership agreement. Not some legal Zoom template, but a proper LLC operating agreement with all the bells and whistles my corporate experience had taught me to include. I structured it so Alexandra had voting control for day-to-day decisions, but my 49% stake came with specific protections. The key clause was buried in Section 14.3, written in the kind of legal language that looks boring, but packs the punch of a nuclear weapon. In the event of any material corporate restructuring, public offering, or sale of substantially all company assets, unanimous consent of all members holding 25% or greater equity stakes is required. In plain English, she could run the company day to day, hire and fire people, pick the office coffee, but she couldn't sell my life's work without my signature. "Sign here," I told her, sliding the printed copy across my kitchen table. The pages were still warm from my laser printer, She barely glanced at it, just flipped to the signature page like she was signing for a pizza delivery. "You really don't trust anyone, do you?" "I trust paperwork," I said, watching her scrawl her signature across the bottom. "Paperwork doesn't forget." She laughed, that genuine laugh she had back then, before success turned it into something calculated and hollow. "Fair enough." "Partners?" "Partners," I agreed, shaking her hand across my kitchen table. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have added about 50 more protective clauses. But hindsight is 20/20, and in 2016, Alexandra Sterling was still the woman who'd split gas money for road trips to investor meetings and celebrated our first $10,000 in revenue with beer and barbacoa tacos. The next 5 years, it worked like a Swiss watch. We were a machine. Alexandra was the charming CEO the Austin business community loved to celebrate. She was on panels at SXSW, keynoting fintech conferences, networking with Dell executives and local venture capitalists. Her face was on the cover of Austin Business Journal twice, once for rising female CEOs and again for Austin's tech innovators. I was in the background building the actual platform that made her famous, filing patents under the company name, ensuring our financial algorithms met federal banking regulations, making sure every line of code could withstand regulatory scrutiny. While she was schmoozing at fancy events downtown, I was in our server room at 2 a.m., debugging risk management protocols that kept us out of federal prison. We grew fast, real fast. By 2018, we'd closed our Series A, $8 million from a Dallas firm that specialized in Texas startups. Alexandra handled the pitch meetings while I prepared the technical due diligence materials. Perfect division of labor. Then came Series B in 2020. $25 million during the pandemic when everyone thought fintech was the future. We hired our first real employees, developers who actually knew what they were doing, a CFO who understood regulatory compliance, marketing people who could explain our platform without lying about what it did. Alexandra bought a house in Westlake Hills, one of those modern glass boxes that look like they belong in California, not Texas. She traded her Honda Accord for a Tesla Model S and started wearing suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I bought a modest Craftsman in Clarksville and put the rest of my money in index funds. Didn't change my lifestyle much. Still drove my pickup truck. Still wore the same boots I'd had since my Navy days. I liked the work more than the money. Liked the quiet satisfaction of knowing that while Alexandra was giving interviews about disrupting traditional finance, I was the one making sure our algorithms actually worked. But success acts like acid on relationships. It dissolves whatever's holding people together, one molecule at a time. The late nights working side by side turned into late nights working apart. She was at investor dinners in Dallas or Houston. I was at the office auditing our cloud security infrastructure in a windowless room that smelled like industrial carpet and strong coffee. Around 2021, I started noticing the language shift. It was subtle at first, like a barely detectable change in someone's accent. Early on, it was always we. We closed that deal. We need to hire more developers. We're revolutionizing small business lending. By year 6, that we had evaporated like morning dew. It became I think the market is shifting toward embedded finance. I decided to pivot our product roadmap. I built this platform to solve real problems. I didn't say anything at first, figured it was just CEO ego inflation, occupational hazard in the startup world. Every successful founder starts believing their own press releases eventually. I thought we were still partners where it counted, on paper, in the bank account, in the legal documents that actually mattered. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The real trouble started during our Series C round in early 2023. We were closing $75 million, massive money for an Austin fintech startup, the kind of round that gets written up in TechCrunch and makes people in Silicon Valley take notice of what's happening in Texas. The lead investor was Preston Walsh, a sharp private equity guy from Dallas who'd made his fortune in energy before moving into tech. Former Navy like me, so we connected during the technical due diligence meetings. He asked the kind of questions that showed he actually understood what our platform did, not just what it claimed to do. Preston wanted a detailed breakdown of our cap table, the ownership structure that determines who gets what when the money starts flowing. I prepared the document with my usual attention to detail: Alexandra 51%, Hunter 49%, standard co-founder split, clean and transparent. That's when things got weird. 2 hours before our big pitch meeting, the one where we'd either close $75 million or go home empty-handed, Alexandra knocked on my office door. She didn't sit down, just stood there in her $3,000 Armani suit, fidgeting with her phone like she was about to deliver bad news. "Hunter, we need to discuss the cap table presentation." "What about it?" I asked, not looking up from my dual monitors where I was running final checks on our financial projections. "It's complicated for Preston's team. Makes it look like I don't have full operational control. These Dallas guys invest in strong single leaders, not partnerships. They want to see clear command authority." I finally swiveled my chair around to face her. "What exactly are you suggesting?" She took a deep breath like she was about to jump off a cliff. "Let's just simplify the presentation. List your equity under employee option pool or something generic. Just for the pitch deck. We'll clarify everything in the actual legal documents later." My stomach dropped like I'd just hit turbulence at 30,000 feet. In the military, simplifying information for commanding officers has another name: lying. And lying to investors isn't just unethical, it's federal fraud. But I looked at Alexandra standing there in my doorway. This was the woman I'd built everything with. The person who'd shared late-night strategy sessions and celebrated our first profitable quarter with champagne and barbecue. She looked genuinely stressed, maybe even desperate to close this deal. "This is a one-time thing?" I asked. "Just for the presentation?" "Absolutely. The legal docs will reflect the real ownership structure. This is purely about optics." Against every instinct my military training had drilled into me, I agreed. "Fine. But I want a side letter acknowledging the discrepancy, signed by you, dated today, stating that this presentation doesn't reflect actual ownership." She rolled her eyes like I was being paranoid, always the engineer. "Fine. Whatever makes you comfortable." She signed the letter without reading it. I modified the presentation, hiding my 49% stake under reserved equity pool. We walked into that conference room, and Alexandra delivered the pitch of her life. We got the money. $75 million at a $300 million valuation. That was the first compromise. The first crack in the foundation. I thought I was protecting the company from investor confusion. In reality, I was handing Alexandra the crowbar she'd used to pry me out of my own business. She walked out of that meeting high on adrenaline, buzzing like she'd just closed the deal of the century. In the hallway outside the conference room, she hugged me. A quick, one-armed squeeze that felt more like a football coach congratulating the equipment manager than a partner acknowledging a co-founder. "We did it," she whispered in my ear. Then, barely audible, she corrected herself. "I did it." She didn't think I heard that slip. But I hear everything. 20 years of military and corporate training teaches you to listen for the things people don't mean to say. That night, I sat in my living room with a glass of bourbon, pulling out the original partnership agreement from my fireproof safe. The pages were yellowing slightly around the edges, but Section 14.3 was still clear as day. Something felt off about the whole situation. The money was good, the company was growing, but the atmospheric pressure had changed, like that heavy feeling before a Texas thunderstorm rolls in. I did something I hadn't done since my IBM days. Backed up my entire digital life to an encrypted external drive. Every email thread, every document, every thanks for covering my back message from 2016. Didn't know why I was doing it. Call it military paranoia. Call it professional instinct. Call it the subconscious realization that the woman smiling from magazine covers was no longer the person I'd started this company with. The systematic erasure began about 3 months after the Series C closed. It started small, like most betrayals do. The Monday morning leadership meetings that I'd been running for 5 years suddenly disappeared from my calendar. No explanation, no heads up, just empty Monday mornings where there used to be strategy sessions. I walked over to Alexandra's corner office. Naturally, she'd upgraded to the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lady Bird Lake. Her assistant, a 24-year-old named Rachel, who treated Alexandra like she was the second coming of Steve Jobs, tried to intercept me. "She's in a strategic planning session, Hunter," she said, no interruptions. "I'm the CTO," I said, walking past her desk. "I don't interrupt strategy sessions. I run them." I opened the door without knocking. Alexandra was at the head of our main conference table, surrounded by all the new VPs we'd hired with the Series C money. VP of Marketing, VP of Product Development, VP of Strategic Initiatives, which as far as I could tell meant professional meeting attendee. The conversation stopped dead when I walked in. On the whiteboard behind Alexandra was a new organizational chart drawn in her distinctive handwriting. My name wasn't on it anywhere. "Hunter," Alexandra stood up, flashing that investment banker smile she'd perfected over the years. "Just doing some blue sky organizational thinking. Didn't want to bog you down with the conceptual stuff." I looked around the table. These VPs, people I'd hired, people whose paychecks my code generated, couldn't make eye contact. They knew something was happening, and they were picking sides. "Where exactly do I fit in this blue sky organization?" "Your role is evolving," she said, using the kind of corporate speak that means absolutely nothing. "We're creating more focus for you. Compliance, technical architecture, the back-end stuff you love. Less distraction with operational details. Operational details like running the company I co-founded." The room got uncomfortable fast. One of the VPs started studying his laptop screen like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Let's discuss this privately," Alexandra said, her voice dropping to that patronizing tone she used with junior employees. I didn't argue, didn't make a scene. That's what she wanted. The emotional outburst that would let her paint me as unstable, unable to handle the pressure of scaling a business. Instead, I nodded and walked out. Back at my desk, which had somehow moved from the executive area to a regular cubicle near the printer, I logged into our admin console. My access permissions had been systematically downgraded. Used to have super admin privileges on everything: Slack, GitHub, the financial databases, the compliance systems I'd built from scratch. Now I was read only on half the platforms. I tried to access the executive Slack channel where real decisions got made. Access denied. I tried to pull the latest revenue projections. Request permission from owner. The owner was Alexandra. This wasn't an oversight or some IT glitch. This was a deliberate siege. She was cutting my communication lines, isolating me in my own company, making me irrelevant one system access at a time. I could have stormed back into her office, could have demanded explanations, threatened to lawyer up, made threats about my 49% ownership stake. But that would have played right into her hands. She wanted the emotional reaction, the unstable co-founder narrative that would justify whatever she was planning next. Instead, I did what any good intelligence analyst does when under attack. I started documenting everything. I created a new folder on my personal laptop, stored on an encrypted drive that had nothing to do with company systems. Title: Breach Documentation Log. Date: June 15th, 2023. Event: Removed from executive leadership meetings without notice. Evidence: Calendar screenshots. Witness testimony available. Date: June 22nd, 2023. Event: System access downgraded without notification or justification. Evidence: Admin console logs, before-after permission comparisons. Date: July 3rd, 2023. Event: Alexandra takes sole credit for platform development in Austin Business Journal feature article. Evidence: Article clipping contradicts previous public statements. I became a ghost in my own company. New employees didn't know who I was. To them, I was just some quiet guy in IT who'd been there since the early days and somehow hadn't been laid off yet. They'd walk past my desk without acknowledgement, discussing projects I'd designed like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away. The breaking point came in late July. I was in our break room, making my afternoon coffee, when 2 junior developers were talking by the expensive espresso machine Alexandra had bought with Series C money. "Did you catch Alexandra's podcast with Austin Tech Weekly?" one of them said. She was talking about single-handedly architecting our entire risk management system. The woman's a technical genius. "Yeah, I heard there was some old Navy guy who helped with basic coding in the early days," the other replied, scrolling through his phone. "Apparently couldn't keep up when things got sophisticated. You know how these military types are with modern technology." I stirred my coffee slowly, the spoon making a sharp, clear sound against the ceramic mug, a sound that seemed to cut through their conversation. "Actually," I said, turning around to face them. They both jumped like they'd been caught stealing. "That Navy guy wrote every single algorithm keeping this company out of federal prison. And Alexandra's never written a line of production code in her life. I've been debugging her mistakes since 2016. They stared at me with wide eyes and open mouths, probably wondering who this random old guy was and why he was talking to them. "Enjoy your coffee," I said, walking away. My hands were shaking as I walked back to my desk. Not from fear, but from pure rage. This wasn't just about money anymore, or even respect. She was rewriting the fundamental history of our company, erasing my contributions pixel by pixel until I became nothing but a footnote in someone else's success story. The final betrayal came in December 2023, delivered with the coward's timing of a 6 p.m. Friday email. Subject: Organizational Transition and Equity Realignment, from Alexandra Sterling, CEO. Per our discussions regarding your interest in transitioning to an advisory role, we're updating your title from co-founder and CTO to founding technical advisor. This better reflects your current bandwidth and allows you to focus on your core competencies. Your 49% equity stake will be recategorized as non-voting advisory shares to streamline our cap table for the upcoming IPO process. Please review and sign the attached acknowledgement. I read it 3 times, my military-trained mind parsing every word for hidden meaning. Our discussions regarding your interest. We'd never had those discussions. She was manufacturing a reality and asking me to validate it with my signature. And recategorizing my shares, that's not a thing. You can't just change the DNA of equity ownership because it's inconvenient for your IPO plans. I didn't sign anything. Instead, I printed the email and added it to my breach documentation file, which by now was thick enough to choke a horse. Then came the annual bonus meeting. Every year since our Franklin barbecue days, we'd taken $50,000 performance bonuses when we hit our targets. This year, we'd absolutely crushed our numbers. Revenue up 340%, client acquisition through the roof, regulatory compliance perfect. Alexandra called me into her office for what she said would be a year-end performance discussion. She wasn't alone. Wesley, our new CFO, a guy who wore Patagonia vests year-round and used synergy in casual conversation, was there too. Hunter? Alexandra smiled, but it was all teeth, no warmth. Hell of a year. Really appreciate you maintaining operational stability during our growth phase. Wesley chuckled like she'd made a joke. I didn't find it funny. We're making a strategic decision to reinvest all executive compensation back into the company this year, Alexandra continued, leaning back in her chair like she was delivering good news. Cash runway is critical for the IPO timeline. Need to show fiscal responsibility. This applies to you too? I asked directly. Absolutely, she said without missing a beat. 0 cash bonuses for senior leadership. We're all making sacrifices here. 2 weeks later, I'd discover the expense reports showing she'd reimbursed herself $68,000 for business development activities, including a week at some luxury fintech conference in the Bahamas. But I didn't know that yet. Instead of cash, Alexandra continued, we're celebrating Texas style, company barbecue for everyone, real team-building experience. The company barbecue happened 3 days later in our office parking lot. She'd hired a decent local joint, brisket, ribs, sausage, the works, coolers of Shiner Bock and sweet tea. Not terrible food, but definitely not $50,000 worth of appreciation. Listen up, y'all, Alexandra shouted, standing on a folding chair, holding a plate of brisket like a trophy. All 150 employees gathered around in the December chill. They looked tired. They'd been pulling 70-hour weeks for equity promises that kept getting diluted with each funding round. This year was absolutely incredible, she announced. Revenue through the roof, client satisfaction perfect, and it's all because of this amazing team. She spent 10 minutes praising every department except mine, sales team, marketing, product development, even facilities management. But no mention of the technical infrastructure that made everything else possible. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. Now, I know some of y'all were hoping for cash bonuses, Alexandra said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But let me share some wisdom with you. Cash is temporary. Equity is generational wealth. That's why Hunter and I gave up our bonuses this year, to invest in y'all, to buy this barbecue, because when we go public next year, we'll all be eating caviar instead of brisket. The crowd erupted in applause. They actually cheered the woman who'd stolen their bonuses and replaced them with $15 barbecue plates. She looked directly at me across the parking lot and winked. That same smug, triumphant wink that said, I own the narrative. I own these people. You are absolutely nothing. That wink was the biggest mistake of her professional life. Something inside me didn't snap. It clicked into place, like chambering around. I looked at the barbecue setup, at the cheering employees, at Alexandra basking in stolen glory. I walked to my truck without saying goodbye to anyone. I had phone calls to make. That evening I used my emergency system access, a disaster recovery account I'd established years earlier that Alexandra had forgotten about. Found the IPO preparation folder buried in our document system. Inside were draft S1 filings ready for SEC submission. Listed founder, Alexandra Sterling. Ownership percentage, 100%. She was actually going to do it. File federal documents claiming sole ownership of a company she'd built with my hands, my code, my sleepless nights. I copied everything to encrypted drives, then made 2 phone calls. First call, Preston Walsh, our Series C investor. Preston, it's Hunter. I need a lawyer, not a corporate attorney, a litigation specialist. What's going on, Hunter? Securities fraud. I'm about to sink a ship. Preston connected me with Spencer Brooks, a 65-year-old litigation attorney who worked out of an old limestone building downtown. Spencer had the kind of reputation that made opposing counsel nervous and CEOs cancel vacations. Interesting situation, Spencer said after reviewing my documentation. She's planning to commit federal fraud by misrepresenting ownership to the SEC, but we need to let her actually file the documents first. Can't prosecute a crime that hasn't been committed yet. So we wait. Let her walk to the edge of the cliff. Let her file those S1 documents. Let her stand in front of investors claiming she built this empire alone. Then we push. The IPO roadshow was scheduled for February 15th at the Austin Convention Center. All the major institutional investors would attend. Dallas money, Houston energy funds, even some Wall Street firms looking to diversify into Texas tech. That morning, I put on my best suit and drove downtown. The convention center buzzed with the usual crowd: investment bankers, venture capitalists, financial analysts. Alexandra was near the main stage, surrounded by her entourage, looking like a rock star before the biggest concert of her career. At 9 a.m. sharp, she took the stage. The presentation was flawless: polished slides, compelling metrics, charismatic delivery. For 30 minutes, she sold the room on her vision, her leadership, her sole ownership of our revolutionary platform. I architected every algorithm, wrote every line of critical code, and built this company from nothing into a $300 million success story, she declared to thunderous applause. Spencer and I were sitting in the back row. When she made that final claim of sole ownership, Spencer opened his briefcase and handed me a thick legal folder. "Time to serve justice," he whispered. I stood up and started walking toward the stage. The click of my dress shoes on polished concrete was the only sound in the suddenly silent room. "Actually, Alexandra," I said when I reached the front, my voice carrying clearly across 200 stunned faces, "you didn't build this alone. You built it with a partner you're trying to erase." I handed the legal documents to Preston Walsh in the front row. Inside, you'll find our original partnership agreement, documentation of my 49% ownership, and proof that Alexandra just committed securities fraud by claiming 100% ownership of assets she doesn't control. The room exploded. Phones came out, fingers typed furiously, investors headed for exits. "Goldman Sachs is withdrawing from the underwriting syndicate," Preston announced. "We cannot certify an offering where ownership is disputed." Alexandra stared at me from the stage, microphone still in her hand, watching 8 years of manipulation crumble in real time. 3 months later, the SEC investigation concluded. Alexandra resigned under pressure, keeping 15% equity as a silent partner. I ended up with 65% based on actual technical contributions and IP ownership. Today, I run the company with a small team of people who value substance over hype. We're profitable, growing steadily, and building technology that actually helps small businesses instead of just generating headlines. Alexandra moved to Miami, launched a crypto consulting firm that lasted 6 months. Last I heard, she was selling motivational courses on LinkedIn to an audience of 200 followers. Sometimes I think about that barbecue party, about the wink, about how she thought she'd erased me from my own story. Was it worth destroying the IPO, losing the quick money, burning down the fairy tale? I look at my name on the patents, my code running the platform, my company, legitimate and documented. Yeah, it was worth it. Real power doesn't announce itself on social media, it just executes.
Oh, we're almost at level 8. Okay, once excuse me, once we level up. Oh, whoops. Once we level up, we will go home. What are you doing in a towel? Why do I hate you? I don't remember any of the things that have happened. Like, why do I hate this sim? I don't care. It's fine. Did she level up? I didn't get a pop-up for it. Level 8? She is. That's weird. Normally you get a pop-up for that. It's really good self-talk. I don't need to be seducing and killing everybody. Yeah. Yeah, that's her mantra. I mean, it's my mantra because that is my natural inclination. To seduce and murder. I don't know why. It's The Sims. We all do that, right? This is her brother, Robergine. Solid name, by the way. Robergine is an amazing name. I don't remember who came up with that, but... Level 9 charisma? Let's go. Sorry, I don't remember Corey. Okay, let's go home. We've leveled up our fitness, so that's good. Not everybody walking around in towels at the gym. That's hilarious. Correct answer. Thank you, Summer. Wait, we're at 407? That's higher than I thought. Let's go. I don't know what's gonna happen at the end of this vote, but it's gonna be important. Okay. Who's this? Wait, Robergine doesn't live here. Why are you here? It's fine, doesn't matter. Let's eat. Food. I hope there's leftovers.